Yes, so great to have so many people on for tonight. I'm really excited for it. And we're going to dive straight in. What we'll do is I'll just kind of talk you through things as I go. I'll probably talk a little bit about just think equipment and things like that that I've found helpful to buy over the years that I just find have made things easier for me. So we can kind of talk about that. But do ask any questions that you like, whether it's about the food, the recipe, about the way that we're doing it, or anything like that. But similarly, Rosanna will be off mute as well. So we can get into conversations about plastic free, we can get into conversations about zero waste and all of that kind of stuff as we go. And I'll talk a little bit about what I do just in terms of composting and things like that as we go that you might find interesting, you might not. But without further ado, let's get stuck in. So we're going to start with making our flatbreads. So I'm going to move my laptop in a minute so you can see what I'm doing. And that means you don't have to look at this anymore, which I'm sure is a joy for everybody. And so the first thing that I would say is for years, I've kind of managed with a very traditional set of kitchen scales. And for the first time, a little while ago, I've invested in a set of electronic scales. And I have to say, the best thing I've invested in this lockdown. Just because I can go between grams and mils and fluid ounces really quickly. One of the things that I got into in lockdown is working with sourdough starter and making sourdough bread. And if you do any kind of bread making, this has just revolutionized everything for that. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. So we're just gonna get a mixing bowl and we're gonna add into our mixing bowl our 175 grams of self-raising flour. You don't need to sift that or anything, just whack that into your bowl. And to that, we're just going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. If you haven't got self-raising flour and you've got plain flour, that's fine. Just stick an extra teaspoon of baking powder in and that'll be absolutely fine. And then all we're going to do to that is add to it 175 grams of our natural yogurt. And then we're just going to mix that together. And you can either use a spoon, or if you want to get in there with your hands, you can get in there with your hands. But we're just going to mix that together until we've got a nice dough. And Ro, just tell us while we're mixing that, because you've kind of got into making your own yogurt, haven't you?
I have actually, and I know some of my customers are fed up of hearing about my yogurt making. But yeah, my friend Katie and I, she's on this call. We've thought about making yogurt because we make yogurt. I have yogurt every single day with granola. And I am fed up of just buying too many yogurts. And you can get them from Milk and More if you're on one of those milk delivery subscriptions, which I highly recommend. They come in glass jars, which are great. But yeah, just thought it would be fun. I find it really like mindful activity to make my own yogurt. It's definitely hit and miss, but I think I've got there now. So.
What is it that's made it hit and miss?
There's just so many different ways of doing it. So many different ways. I do it in the slow cooker, and I think you can do it in a Dutch oven or you can do it in a yogurt maker. And some people say, oh, just get a yogurt maker. But I do have a very minimalistic kitchen and I try not to have too many gadgets. So I wondered after a couple of attempts of it going wrong whether I should get a yogurt maker. But no, it actually works in the slow cooker. So that's good. Yeah, I really enjoy it. Love making my own yogurt.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just going to add a tiny bit more flour to mine because it's just slightly wet, but that's because I put in a little bit too much yogurt. And so because this is essentially unleavened bread, we don't need to do any huge kneading. We're not looking to get any stretches of gluten or anything like that in it. So once that's come together, that's fine. So it should look a little bit like that now. And once we're done, just don't waste those little bits on your hand. Just scrape them off and add that to the dough. And then you can just leave that in your bowl and cover that with a tea towel, and we'll just let that rest for a little while.
Karen's asked for just a little bit longer.
That's fine.
Just give us one moment. Are we all good to go? Lovely. Just a couple more people. Well, let's start prepping the next bit.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so we're going to prep our butternut squash next. And the recipe asks for half a butternut squash, which obviously is pretty difficult. But what I tend to do is just prep the whole butternut squash, use half of it, and then I'll use the other half and make a butternut squash soup or something for lunch tomorrow.
Can
So
you
what we're
freeze
going to do
butternut squash,
is
Phil?
just top and tail it.
Can you freeze squash, Phil?
Can you what?
Can you freeze it?
I've never frozen it fresh. I've frozen it cooked. So I'd be tempted to, like, if I'm going to roast it or something, I would tend to roast the whole thing, and then you could freeze what you've roasted. Yeah.
I actually froze butternut squash last week, and it does not work.
Oh, really?
No, I imagine it does fresh. It'd be like freezing fruit or something like that. And the part of the issue is in the defrosting process. It just will generally turn to mush.
Thanks for that. Appreciate the help.
This is probably not news to any of you, but my life was revolutionised about a year ago when I discovered that you can peel butternut squash. You don't have to do it with a knife. So if you've got a decent peeler, actually, it's just really easy to peel that.
Does it have to be peeled?
Interestingly, I would say for a recipe like this, it does. Quite often, if I'm roasting butternut squash, I'll roast it in its skin. So you can eat the skin. Absolutely no problem with that at all.
As just a way of reducing waste.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Sure. If not, there's always sorry, the last sort of part is rot, which is composting.
Yeah.
If you have got home composting, obviously keep your veggie peels and do put them in the home composting bin.
Yeah.
And if you've never home composted before, I highly recommend it. On my Instagram, there is a link that I use that is a composting for beginners as a way of getting our food back into the soil. It's really nutrient friendly.
And it's really easy. We started composting when we moved into this house, so we've been composting now for about 3 years. And it's really easy. The main issues that you get with composting is it's either too wet or it's too dry. And they're really easy to solve. If your compost is a bit wet, I will tear up things like the kind of cardboard that your avocados come on, or mushrooms or things like that, and that can go in your compost. If it's really wet, you can just tear up some newspaper and put that in, and that will help it dry out. But mainly you just need a good mix of garden waste and kitchen waste. Too much kitchen waste usually leads to it being a bit wet.
Okay, so if everyone's peeled their butternut squash, we're going to start chopping it.
But before we do that, we need to scoop out the seeds. And again, the seeds are, most people just throw the seeds away. The seeds are really nice. You can toast them. So for example, if you wanted to use them as a garnish on the curry, you could just toast these either in the oven or in a frying pan, and they're just really nice as a garnish. So I just use a spoon to kind of scrape those out.
An ice cream scoop is the sort of best utensil if you've got one. If not, a spoon will help.
Is that your tip, Rosanna, ice cream?
No, that comes from Christina down there.
Oh, well done. Thank you, Christina. I've never thought of using an ice cream scoop.
I tried it a few weeks ago and it revolutionised everything.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to give that a go next time.
You are welcome.
So I'm going to save those because I'm going to use them later. So take half our butternut squash, and we're just going to chop that into about 1.5 centimetre cubes. Again, they don't need to be too, I'm a big believer in things, they don't need to be really precise. We're not doing cordon bleu cooking. And I always think that when you've got different sizes, they cook at slightly different rates, so you get different textures in your food then as well, which I always think is nice. And obviously, if you're cooking for more than this is usually enough. Like if Harry and I have this will be enough for supper tonight and usually another meal as well. So if you're cooking for more than 4, you can just put in the whole butternut squash and increase the quantities according to whether you want to cook it for 6 or 8. Going to have mine's quite a small squash, so I'm going to have a little bit extra in ours. Okay. So once you've chopped your squash, you can just stick that in a bowl for now. Okay, how are we all doing? Are we already done butternut squash?
Yep, all good.
All good? Okay. So
Okay, you are a bit behind as well, don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry, that's fine. So then we're going to go ahead and we are going to chop our onion.
I don't know if anyone has any great tips on chopping onion. I have such sensitive eyes. I always deathly cry every time. I even cry with leeks though, so that's even a thing.
I mean, that's just, I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous.
I know, I think I just have really sensitive eyes. I don't know, I've heard so many different ways of chopping onions: underwater, doing it when you chop off both ends, doing it when you chop off just one end. I've not found a way yet to make chopping an onion without crying.
No. I think it's probably a good release of emotion anyway.
Apparently, if you wet the knife first before cutting it can help. Or if you wear contacts, you won't cry. Or ski goggles. Thank you, Ruth.
Yes, I have seen people wear ski goggles for it.
I don't have any ski goggles, but that is certainly an option. I don't wear contacts, but I could, well, I can't really borrow someone's. But I can wet the knife. I can wet the knife before cutting. That's something I can do.
Okay.
And with the onions, just roughly chop them as you would normally for your dinner. I like mine in bigger chunks, but my husband likes them in really tiny, so I kind of do a medium size.
Yeah. It depends on what you're doing. So when we do risotto next week, my personal thought is that for risotto they should be quite small, but for curry I'll do them probably a bit bigger.
Quick edit, not next week, the week after. 24th.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Not next week, the week after. Is it pasta balls next week then?
No, it's every other week. So 24th we'll do the risotto.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. And so those of you that are done with the onion chopping as well, you can prep your 3 cloves of garlic as well. At the moment, you can just peel them so they're ready to go.
Do we need to be making any pans hot or anything, Phil?
No, not for a minute.
Lovely. And if you are using an electric hob or if you're using a gas hob, there's slightly different timings, but we'll try and we'll mention both.
Okay. So I'm going to take my garlic over ready. I'm going to put the light on so you can see the hob a bit better. Are we all good onion-wise?
Looks like it.
Yeah, great. So we can stick a good glug of, I forget that you can see me here as well. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah, it looks like there's lots of thumbs up.
Can you hear me? Yeah, good. So we're gonna use a good glug of Mrs. Middleton's. You can use the olive oil as well, but Mrs. Middleton's is obviously available at the store. So we're just going to use a good glug of that, stick that on medium heat, and we're going to whack our onions in there. And we're just going to let those cook for a couple of minutes until they're just starting to soften. So if you haven't got a garlic press, while those are starting to soften, you might want to just start chopping your garlic. And you're going to chop that into as smaller chunks as you possibly can. And if they start to sizzle too quickly, just bring the heat down a little bit because we don't want them to burn or brown. We just want them to sweat and soften.
I find a medium heat on my electric hob. I usually put it at about a 4 or a 5. Or higher for Katie.
Yeah, it depends on your hob. I tend to find with halogen, I probably put it on about a 5 or a 6, and then if it's too much, I'll turn it down. But sometimes I think with halogen, it takes a little longer to actually get warm.
It does, yeah. Karen and Matt agree.
Yeah.
Lovely. Phil, do we need to boil the kettle or anything at the moment?
Whenever you're ready, you can stick the kettle on ready for your rice. But we'll put the rice on once we've got all of the curry together. We'll just move that about a bit so it doesn't stick.
So all we're doing at the moment is just sauteing the onions in the pan, as you can see in Phil's video at the moment. We don't want them to burn, we just want them to get more translucent.
That's good. So once they're starting to soften, just turn down the heat a little bit. And you can see mine now are just starting to go a little bit translucent. So now we can add our 3 cloves of garlic.
If you don't have a garlic press, that's absolutely fine. I sometimes just chop them up really fine or squish them with the back of my knife and then chop them really fine. But a garlic press is great for just getting it into mush.
The thing with a garlic press is, number one, it's easy, but also it depends on how you want your garlic to flavour. So if you chop your garlic, that will give you a very mild garlic flavour. If you chop it really small, that will give you a bit more of a garlic flavour, and crushed garlic will give you the strongest garlic flavour. So that can also be dependent upon how you want it. So just turn that heat right down now, because you don't want the garlic to burn. Because what tends to happen with garlic, in fact, I'm going to turn that off the heat for a minute just to let it settle. The garlic goes really bitter when it's burned, and it's not very nice. So then, once we've done that, we're also going to grate our ginger into there as well.
Phil's peeled his already, so if you haven't peeled that, you're welcome to just peel it. I don't know if
if you haven't peeled it yet, just to make sure you take it off the heat, because otherwise it'll all get brown.
And in terms of ginger, it's about a sort of a thumb size, but depends on your preference of taste as well.
Yeah,
depends how strong you like it.
It's not the easiest thing in the world to peel, but it does get there in the end.
But ginger is absolutely amazing for anti-inflammatory, anti-sickness. It's a really good, great food to add in. So I always bung loads in. It is quite a powerful flavour, so do be aware of that, but also has fantastic health benefits.
Yeah, it does.
If you've bought too much ginger, that's absolutely fine. You can always throw it in other recipes, or just put it in some hot water with some lemon. That's a really good drink to have in the morning or before bed.
Yeah. And really nice in smoothies. We put it a lot in smoothies. And literally just a chunk of it, a good thumb-sized hunk of it in any smoothie is just a really nice flavour. So we're just going to cook that now on a low heat for a minute or so. Just let that warm through. And once that's cooked through for a minute, we can start adding our spices. So we are going to go with, again, depending on your preference, either mild or medium curry powder. So we're going to go with 2 teaspoons of that. And then the thing with spices for curry is that just play around with them. As you get more confident, you'll kind of try different combinations. So I'm putting in half a teaspoon of garam masala, half a teaspoon of ground coriander, half a teaspoon of ground cumin, and I'm going to put in 3 or 4 cardamom pods as well.
If you don't have cardamom pods, that's absolutely fine. You can use ground cardamom.
Yeah.
If you want just about a teaspoon or half a teaspoon, depending.
And if you want to add a bit more heat to it, I'm going to put in, just because I've got it, I'm going to put in a tiny little bit of chili powder. Because for me, I can make a combination then that's somewhere between mild curry powder and medium. Because I find curry powder, medium curry powder, just a little bit too hot. And then once you've done that, just mix that in. And we're just going to let that cook with the spices just for a minute or so to let them really release their flavour.
Made this at 7:30 this morning and it smells so good, but before you've had breakfast is not the smell that you want.
And you should start to really smell those flavours coming through now. We'll just give that another 30 seconds or so. Okay, and then we're going to add our chopped butternut squash from earlier. And just mix that in, get it nice and covered with the onion and the spices. And if you're using brown rice, I would definitely recommend getting your kettle on now and start thinking about getting that brown rice on. Okay, and then we're going to add to that our tin of tomatoes. Just give that a bit of a stir.
This is the liquid that we're adding into the squash, by the way, Jenny.
And then once we've got that mixed in, we're going to add in our tin of coconut milk. Again, just give that a good mix, and you should start to see that coconut milk take on that gorgeous curry colour of the tomatoes. And this is, I find this recipe a really flexible recipe, so you can use it for eating up as well. So for example, if you've got, you know, a bit of a manky old pepper, just chop that up, put that in here as well. That'll go really nicely with it. Any bits of veg that you want to use up can go in there as well. If it's a soft veg, you know, so if it's something like broccoli or something like that, I would not add it for probably another 10 minutes or so, because otherwise it'll overcook. But a vegetable that will hold itself with the heat, like a pepper or something, just stick in now as well. And then to that, we're just going to add how much water are we going to add? Just about 3/4 of a cup of water. So I'm going to use a small cup like that. And then once all that's in there, you can whack the heat up, and we're just going to bring that to a boil.
You can add in about 1/2 cup of water. I actually just used 1/4 because I like my my curry just a little bit thicker. But Phil put in about 1/2 cup.
Yeah. And the other thing you might want to add in now as well is just a good pinch of salt. I'm finding that I'm getting braver with salt now. Because salt was the enemy for such a long time. I just pretty much, for years, eradicated salt from food. But now I'm kind of bringing it back again and getting braver about how much salt I put in things. So I'm going to stick the kettle on in preparation for our rice as well. And that's just starting to come to the boil now.
Are we still leaving the hob on low, or are we increasing it to medium heat?
Say that again.
Are we leaving the hob on low, or have we increased it to medium heat?
Well, we whacked it on high just to get it boiling. Then once it's boiling, we're going to put it on a low heat to simmer. So mine's just coming to the boil now. I want to get it boiling pretty well. before I put the lid on and turn it down. So you can probably see that's boiling quite nicely now. So I'm just going to put the lid on that and turn that down to a simmer.
If you are using tins of tomatoes or coconut milk, obviously please do recycle those tins. Thoroughly wash them out, and you don't have to remove the paper on the side, but I always remove it and just put it inside the tin. And the lids, you can leave them attached or put them inside. Food, anything that you recycle with food on it, it always can contaminate the rest of recycling. So always do make sure it's as cleaned out as you possibly can get it before you put it in the recycling.
So that's now simmering away quite nicely. Where are we all at? Are we all at the same place? Are we all simmering away nicely?
Hannah is getting there. I think Katie's on her way. Everyone else seems to be doing okay.
Great.
That's fine. You can just leave that to simmer. That's fine, and then we'll move on to the next step and just keep letting it simmering. Right, I'll switch you back over to the countertop video.
So now that's simmering. We've probably got maybe 5 minutes or so before we'll whack the rice on. So I'm being good and doing a little bit of tidying up as I go. I'm only doing that to impress you. I don't normally do that.
I'm definitely a cleaner as I go.
Any thoughts, comments, questions so far?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you need to.
I found my dough was very wet. I had to call out to the husband. It's like hands are like full of flour and yogurt. It's like I had to add quite a bit of flour to get it less sticky.
It is quite a wet dough, so I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Okay.
The thing with any dough is if it's wet, it will just keep taking up flour. And again, one of the things that I've learned over the last probably 8 or 10 weeks while I've been playing around with bread making is that wet dough is okay. It works. You just need to have oily hands or floured hands when you're kind of handling it. But wet dough is okay. I did an online virtual cook along with an Irish guy for sourdough, and we made ciabatta, which when you make it is probably about a 76% hydration. So it's such a wet dough, but it turns out incredible.
Okay.
So we can probably start putting the rice on, I think. Yeah, let's do that.
So you adjust the amount of rice that you need. We have suggested, I think, I can't remember how much, maybe 350, 250, 350 rice. But obviously adjust it for how many is eating.
It works, I think it works out in theory, it's meant to work out about 70 or 80 grams per person. But I tend to work mine out in mugs. So a good mug is enough for 2 people, probably with a little bit left over for the dog in his breakfast tomorrow. He likes a bit of rice.
The thing with rice is this is the one thing I try and always measure right, because leftover rice I never know what to do with, and I hate wasting rice.
Oh really? Oh, it's just nice I'll have it like in a salad for lunch. Just put some harissa or something like that with it, and it's just really nice thrown on a salad.
Okay, rice salad. I think
or like just egg fried rice.
All right, yeah.
It's better than day-old rice.
Yeah.
But the thing is, because we plan our meals for every night of the week, I don't never have room to be like, oh, I can use this leftover rice, like egg fried rice, and then obviously I'm working during the day.
Plan egg fried rice for the night after and just cook double the first night.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or you could do it for lunch, but you're working at lunchtime.
Yeah, so I could bring one of those like hot plates to work or something.
Yeah, that would be a fun.
Yeah, make fried rice.
So we're just giving that a good rinse. Just to get all that starch off it. And then that can go in your pan.
How much water do we need to put in with the rice?
And then and again, for me, that's where I find it helpful using cups, because whatever amount of cup of rice you've used, just double that for water. So I used a whole cup, so I'm going to use 2 cupfuls of water. And that's boiling, hence why we put the kettle on earlier. And again, you can cook rice probably slower than we think. So again, I tend to stick that on a medium heat. I don't want it to just boil really rapidly and take up all that water straight away. So I put it on a medium heat. Whack a bit of salt in there. Again, if you want to get really posh with your rice, something that you can add to it, which is really nice, is something called simple sumac. And you can just put a teaspoon of that in your rice, and it gives it a really nice colour and a really nice flavour.
I usually use a little bit of turmeric in my rice just because I love it.
Yeah.
It's really beneficial. Colours it, makes it just a little bit more.
Is it the same as normal sumac, or is it like is that special?
Good question.
I don't think there's a difference.
I think it's probably the same. It's a combination of sumac and salt.
Oh, perfect. I can do that. I've
Yeah.
got sumac, but I don't have that.
Okay. Yeah, so it's probably the same thing, but it's really nice in rice.
Nice. Okay, fun.
I'd never even heard of sumac until Phil told me about it.
I'd never heard of it until I found it in Waitrose and bought some to experiment with.
Just to try.
Yeah.
Very brave.
We got it for some recipe or something, but that's such
No. I just saw it there and I was like, oh, and I'd read the back of it and it said good in rice and salad. So I was like, oh, I'll try it.
How much do you put in, Phil?
I put in like a teaspoon.
Okay.
You could probably put more in, but I've never been brave enough with it yet to put in more.
Well, I'm going to do a bit more because I'm cooking for more people.
Okay.
Perfect.
I'm going to be brave and I'm going to put in another half.
Yay.
Showing off on camera.
Yes.
Just give the rice a bit of a stir as well, just so it doesn't stick to the bottom. And I'm just going to give the curry a little bit of a stir as well. Again, just want to make sure it's not sticking, but that's looking good. Bubbling away nicely. So where are we? Are we all at the same place, right? Everybody's rice on? Yeah.
Everyone seems to be good, yeah.
Good. Okay, so what we can do now is just prep the mixture that we're going to put on our flatbreads. So again, if you've got a decent heavy bottom saucepan, lovely. If not, any saucepan will do. And then we're just going to whack into that the how much butter? 20 grams of unsalted butter. But to be honest, I never weigh this out. I just whack in a good dollop.
A dollop of butter. I think it's maybe a sliver.
So that, well, no, it's more than a sliver. A slollop.
Ooh.
No?
It's not a slollop.
We're not having a slollop.
Saucepan rather than, oh, you're melting the butter.
Yeah, we're going to melt the butter and we're going to add to that our garlic and whatever else we want to put in. So again, just stick that on a really low heat for now, just to start melting.
Karen's asked if this is going to be the same pan we'll cook the flatbreads in.
No, we need a frying pan, or if you've got one, so if you've got a griddle pan, they're really nice on a griddle pan because you get those lovely lines. But if not, a frying pan is fine.
Hang on 1 second. Just 1 second.
And then you can start getting your other 2 garlic cloves ready, which is going to go in our butter.
And what, are we just peeling and chopping?
Peel and chop or crush, depending on what you want to do with it. Right at the beginning of lockdown, there was this meme going around that was all talking about how much money we're saving because we're not traveling, we're not going in the car, we're not doing all this, compared with our shopping budget, and how we were spending like £2,000 a week on food.
There's
and
a
I was
lot
like,
of faces nodding right now.
yeah, I really get that. So I started buying things to play around with that I would never normally buy, and I bought myself. I don't know if you've ever come across this. I bought myself some black garlic, which is ridiculous. It was about £3.50, I think, for like one, bulb. And it's really interesting. It's got a really lovely smoky flavour, but it's really sticky. Like it's impossible to crush. You just kind of have to chop it up and almost melt it. But I have to say, it has the most amazing flavour. So that butter should just be melting now. So again, we can whack into there our chopped garlic. So I'm going to chop this one.
Why are we chopping the garlic this time?
Well, just because I thought I would. And because I'm lazy and I can't be bothered to wash up my garlic press.
This is going to go on the flatbreads that we're making with the butter mix. I prefer the chopped taste of that, but some people might prefer the crushed.
Yeah, it is a slightly less thing like this, and also it gives you a bit of crunch as well on it, which I like. Once you've got all that chopped, you can just whack that in with the butter, And then depending on whatever else you want to put in there, I'm going to go with some fresh coriander that I'm just going to chop and put in there. But you can use dry coriander as well, that's fine.
I haven't got any coriander. Do you think you can use rosemary?
You can use rosemary. Have you got any fennel?
Only dried. I've got fresh rosemary or fresh basil.
Oh yeah, rosemary will be nice. Stick some rosemary in there. If you've got fennel seeds as well, fennel seeds are really lovely on these. And again, they just toast really nicely in the butter. And if you're like me, I have an absolute aversion to coriander raw. It's one of the most rancid things in the world. But they've discovered that it's genetic. So if you carry a certain gene, then raw coriander tastes like soap to you. And that is the most apt description I can give it, because it absolutely does. But once you cook it, it changes the DNA structure, so it stops tasting rank then. So again, just give that, you can just roughly chop that coriander if you're using fresh. And you can whack that in there as well. Just keep an eye on your rice as well, that it doesn't get too dry. If it is, just turn the heat down a little bit. And just give your butter with its garlic a little stir. So again, it should be looking a little bit like that now. And once that's melted, you can just turn that off, really. And that'll just, especially if you've got a heavy bottom saucepan, the heat in the saucepan will just keep that lovely and warm. And with basmati, once it does start to take up all that moisture, you can just whack the lid on it, and that will keep it from drying out too much. So we're just going to check. The key thing with the curry is really the butternut squash. So we just want to check that. So stick a fork in it. If a fork goes through your butternut squash, then we're kind of on the road to being ready. And mine's pretty much get a fork into that, so we're getting there with that. So what we can do now is start prepping our flatbreads. So you want to find yourself a little space where you can dust the worktop with a little bit of flour. Yeah, lovely. So we're just going to dust that with a little bit of flour, just to keep it nice and dry. A plate or something is helpful just to put your flatbreads on as we prepare them. You will need a little rolling pin. If you've got, I do icing, so I've got a nice little one, which is really helpful. So just take your dough and whack that on the flour. And then if you've got, just shape it really, because we're gonna chop this into 4. So if you shape it into a oblong, is that the right shape? Maths was never my strong point. Something like that. Yeah. And then I'm just going to chop that into about 4 equal-sized pieces. And then we're just going to roll those into a little ball and roll it out.
If you've made, obviously, more flatbread, because we always make more because I love bread, obviously then just cut it into like 6 or however many.
Yeah. And that's it. They just look like that when you've done them. Just keep relocating that flour so they don't stick. Give them a bit of a coating on either side. Again, if they're not exact sizes, it really doesn't matter.
How thick are we aiming for here, Phil?
Like maybe 1/2 centimetre, because they're going to puff up when we cook them. So about, I don't know if you can see that very well, but about that.
Quick question. I've made enough for 4, but I live on my own and I probably shouldn't eat all 4 tonight. Can I keep the dough and make 2 tomorrow?
You can. Or, yeah. It's up to you. You can either do that and you can freeze the dough. If you've got the dough ready, you can freeze it now.
Ah.
Or you can cook them now and then freeze them as are. But I tend to find that they keep pretty well anyway. So I'll just, if you don't put the covering on them now, you can just stick them in the toaster and have them for lunch tomorrow with some soup or something.
Awesome, thank you.
So that's our 4 flatbreads all ready to go. So just make sure you have a check on your rice in particular. And then the other thing that we're going to do with the flatbreads, once you've checked on your rice, so I'm going to take my rice is pretty much ready, so I'm going to take it off the heat and just keep that lid on it. So with a sharp knife, all we're going to do now with each of our flatbreads is just score them.
And just explain what scoring is, just in case someone doesn't know.
So just literally with a knife, you're not cutting through it, you're just making a couple of incisions in the middle, so it looks like that. But it doesn't go very deep, but it just creates the surface area to all that lovely buttery goodness that we're going to put on them when they're cooked. So just a vague idea of where people are at. How close are people to having shaped their flatbreads?
Lots of thumbs up, lots of thumbs up. Yep, looking good, looking good. Yep.
Great. So what we're going to do is grab whatever you're going to cook them in. So whether that's a griddle pan or a saucepan, either is fine. And you're going to whack that on a pretty high heat. So for me, I'm going to whack it on the highest heat I've got. And while that's heating, get your bag of spinach and just whack that in with the curry. as you probably know, spinach always looks like you've got loads until it's cooked, and then it's never as much as you think. You don't need to do anything with it now. So once you put it in with the curry, just whack the lid back on. And while we're cooking our flatbreads, that will wilt and then stir in really nicely and easily when we're done. If you haven't already, just check on that rice, make sure it's not burning, sticking to the bottom of the pan. Basmati is always a little bit stodgy, but that's how it should be. And again, if you can see that, you can see the kind of specks and the colour that the sumac give it, which is really nice. Okay. So we want that pan to get really hot.
Best way to know when your pan is hot is obviously just put your hand just gently over it and you'll start to feel the heat above it. And once it feels quite hot, then it's good to go.
Yeah. Or if you've been cooking for a while and your hands are a bit cast, just stick it in there. If it hurts, it's hot.
Yeah, I don't recommend that.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't say that, should I, from a health and safety point of view? You can see already that spinach is starting to wilt in there really nicely. Okay, so that's getting nice and hot now. And again, my griddle pan is quite small, so depending on the size of your pan will depend on how many you can cook at once. But I'm just going to stick 2 in. So all we're going to do, you don't need any oil for these, just whack them straight in the pan. I'm going to cook them for about 2 minutes on each side. If you're like me and you're the sort of person that likes your plates warm, probably stick them in your oven now on 100 or something like that, just to warm up. And you probably already start to see your flatbreads are starting to puff out a little bit.
There's about a minute left from when Phil put his flatbreads on.
Yeah, I put a timer on, so if you put them on at the same time as me, you'll hear the timer go off. That's about the 2 minutes, so just have a check. What you should see when you lift it up, so actually I'm going to leave mine on for another minute, because although they are cooking, they're not getting that They're not quite at that nice brown ring stage yet, which is what I really want. So I'm just going to give mine another minute on that side before I flip them. But that's probably, because cast iron takes a little while to warm up. If you've got a frying pan, that probably got hot really quickly.
All you're looking for is that they're just gently browned. So that's when you know that they're done. So lovely, thank you, Caroline. She's flipped hers. Hers have got a great brown colour. So this is completely up to you. Just flip them when you think that they're a good brown. Yep, that's lovely, Emma. Great, Rachel. Lovely, Annalie. Thank you, Ruth. Yep, go ahead and flip them. Looks like they're all ahead of you.
Unbelievable.
So if you want to go ahead and flip yours, Phil.
So that one's ready. This one's still a little bit behind, but that's all right.
Don't burn them. And as soon as if you are a bit further ahead, all you're going to do is just pop them onto a plate just to rest, and then you can put your other two onto the pan.
Put the timer back on.
I missed that because I had to put my fan on because of the smoke. But are we putting butter on them straight away when they come off, or do you do that later?
No, you can put it on now. So once you've put your other two in, the two you've taken off, you can start brushing with the butter and garlic mixture. And it's really nice to do it while it's hot because it really soaks them in then.
Great.
If you've got like a little brusher, I have a little silicone brusher. That's the best way to sort of scoop up the butter and just literally just brush them straight onto, thank you, straight onto your flatbreads. And obviously then it will soak up all the flavour.
Lovely, it's getting there.
Oh, it's smelling good.
Is Tom warming yours up?
So I made the curry this morning, and he is following along with this, making the flatbreads just in the kitchen behind me. And so he can hear your instructions. Someone did message who we're sending this to after. She's gluten-free, and she's substituted with gluten-free flour, and that's absolutely fine for those who are gluten intolerant.
So I've just put my other two in. I'm going to dust these two with my mixture. And again, just be really generous with the mixture because it's so nice. And it's the sort of thing where there's just not an awful lot of point in having a lot left over. So they look a little bit like that when they're done.
Keep them there for a moment, Phil. Lovely. Oh, they look great, Emma. Feel free to point your cameras down, give us a look. Fantastic, Ruth. Karen, they look great.
Amazing.
Lovely. Yeah, these are all looking really good. Oh, Chrissy, you've got a nice griddle pan look as well. That's lovely. Oh, Katie's look good too. Jenny, they look fantastic.
Oh, nice, Jenny. Yeah, they look brilliant.
Oh, nice, Hannah. Really nice. You can really see the mixture on Hannah's there.
And while that is, where did I put my spatula? Interesting.
One in the sink.
Yeah. Thank you. Just you can give your curry a mix round now and get that spinach mixed into it nicely.
Is your curry still on heat, or is it just warm?
I've just taken it off the heat actually. But there's no reason for it not to be on the heat. It's only because I moved my pan away. I swapped it with the griddle pan. We're nearly there. So hungry. Yeah.
I bet you more than one of you have already had a spoonful of the curry. Am I wrong or am I right? Yeah, knew it. Yes, of course they have. Yeah.
Tasting.
Everyone's doing a taste test. Lovely.
After, as much as I love all of this, one of my favourite things is the flatbreads.
Oh, absolutely. Ooh, yeah, and especially on a day like today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really good actually for a cold day.
Okay, so just whilst we're finishing up then, the next cook along is in 2 weeks' time on the 24th Wednesday, exactly the same time. And we'll be making the sweet potato risotto, which is absolutely amazing if you like risotto. And then obviously the third session will be the 2 weeks after that, where we're making pasta balls in a marinara sauce.
And just to say as well, with the pasta balls, in an ideal world, you do really need a food processor, because when we've cooked the pasta, we're going to whiz that with quite a lot of stuff in order to make the balls. So it doesn't work particularly well if you're just chopping it. So if you've got a couple of weeks, if you're able to borrow one or something, if you haven't got one, then that would be ideal. But we'll make it work, whatever. And I suppose, just a word on plating up. Like, it's home cooked food, so we're just, however you throw it on the pan is absolutely fine. But if you're doing this as a dish that you want to be, kind of really impressing somebody over, then serving it, with the curry in maybe a smaller. Take those off. Serving it in like a smaller dish on its own like that, and using like a metal ring to shape your rice can just turn what's normally just a home cooked meal into something that becomes a bit of a showstopper.
If you want to shape your rice, you can use a metal ring, just pop your rice in and then pull off the ring. Alternatively, I just have a little small ramekin and I lightly oil it, put my rice in, really, really squish it down into the bowl, just a little ramekin bowl, and then turn the ramekin upside down onto the plate, pull the ramekin off, and you've got a nice little dome of rice. And then you can put some fresh coriander there and it will look really special.
And there we go. So we're ready to dish up.
So do dish up, and if you want, post a picture, send them over to me, pop them on social media. I'd love to see how they would work out, and I'll include some in the next.
My bread is kind of starting to stick a bit. Do you think the pan's got a bit too hot?
It might have done. Often when it sticks, it can't be because the pan's too cold.
Ah.
You do need
It's pretty hot.
It's really hot. So it might be, it might just be that it's sticking. So just give it a
Hi.
metal spatula, just give it a good shove.
Hi.
And just to say, like I said at the beginning, we'll send out the link for the recipe and the video after this.
Try not to slop it onto my laptop.
Okay, so once you've served up, we're all going to do it at probably slightly different times. It's absolutely fine. I don't want you to go and have to wait for everyone to finish before you can go and eat your food. Enjoy it whilst it's hot. I'll say my goodbyes now. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the first store cook along. So glad that all of you could make it. Thank you so much, Phil, for doing it. Let's just show us your plate there, Phil. Just
hang on. I'm gonna bring the laptop to the plate before there's a disaster.
Lovely. They look fantastic. Fantastic. So yeah, take some pictures, send them over if you want to. That's no pressure, or just go ahead and enjoy your food. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If you're about to head off, go and eat your food whilst it's hot. Just give us a quick goodbye. I'll see if I can.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.